In every story of darkness, there lies a seed, a single moment, a fracture, an origin where innocence is stripped away and replaced with something far more sinister. For Cletus Kasady, that seed was planted long before he ever encountered the alien parasite that would turn him into Carnage. His monstrous destiny was carved, not by choice, but by a lifetime of cruelty, neglect, and a world that seemed designed to sharpen his hate. If Venom is chaos restrained by an uneasy code, then Carnage is chaos unleashed, pure and unfiltered, a force born in blood. Cletus Kasady was born in Brooklyn, New York, into a life already fractured. His childhood was not marked by toys or laughter, but by screams, broken glass, and the heavy hands of those who were supposed to love him. His father was an abusive man, violent and merciless, while his mother was unstable and often the target of his father's rage. The boy grew up surrounded by the echoes of fists against flesh and the sharp sting of words designed to cut deeper than any blade. It was here, in these early years, that Kasady's understanding of the world was twisted beyond repair. There are those who endure hardship and emerge with resilience, seeking to break the cycle of suffering. Cletus was not one of them. He did not grow stronger from the pain, he grew darker. Where another child might have cried out for help, Kasady learned silence. Where others might have longed for love, he nurtured only hate. Even as a boy, there was something chilling about his stare, a quiet emptiness that seemed to swallow the warmth of any room he entered. But the torment inside his home was only the beginning. Kasady carried his darkness into the outside world. At school, he was bullied mercilessly, and while many children cower in fear of such cruelty, Cletus responded with brutality. He lashed out at those who mocked him, often with disturbing violence, far beyond what anyone expected from a child his age. Small animals disappeared around his neighborhood, their remains discovered in ways too grotesque to be coincidence. Teachers whispered about him in the faculty room. Parents told their children to stay away. He was not just a troubled boy, he was a danger, even then. The breaking point came when Kasady, still only a child, committed his first murder. Accounts differ on who it was. Some say it was his grandmother, others a young girl who mocked him, but the truth is buried in the madness of his past. What is certain is that the act did not traumatize him. It liberated him. For the first time, Cletus felt powerful. He tasted freedom not in compassion or connection, but in destruction. Killing did not fill a void in him, it was his nature. As he grew older, so too did his body count. Kasady's life became a trail of corpses, each murder more brazen than the last. He burned down his orphanage after suffering abuse from caretakers, killing countless innocents in the flames. He killed authority figures who tried to control him, strangers who looked at him the wrong way, anyone unfortunate enough to cross his path. To Kasady, life was meaningless, a cruel joke. The only truth was that blood was the only ink that could write his story. His philosophy was simple yet terrifying. Life is chaos, and chaos demands carnage. Eventually, the law caught up with him. Cletus Kasady was arrested and imprisoned, branded a serial killer whose crimes defied comprehension. But prison was no cage for him. To Cletus, it was merely another playground for his sadism. Guards, inmates, anyone near him lived in fear of what he might do next. His name spread in whispers, his reputation growing as a monster in human skin. Yet fate had not finished with him. For all the horror Kasady had already unleashed, his true transformation had not yet begun. That day would come when he crossed paths with Eddie Brock, the man bonded to the alien symbiote known as Venom. When Venom and Brock were captured and brought into the same prison that held Kasady, destiny set the stage for something far more terrifying than either had anticipated. In the cold, damp walls of Rikers Island, Cletus Kasady's life of violence was about to merge with something alien, something that would take his madness, amplify it, and unleash a being unlike anything the world had ever faced. Venom was lethal, but bound by Eddie Brock's fractured sense of morality. Carnage would be something else entirely raw, unrestrained evil made flesh. Cletus Kasady was already a killer, already a monster. But in the shadows of that prison, the universe prepared to give his darkness a new form. A parasite would soon slip into his veins, bonding not just to his body, but to his very soul. When the twisted union of serial killer Cletus Kasady and the alien symbiote was born, the world witnessed the rise of something far darker than Venom could ever be. Carnage was not merely a creature of hunger or survival, he was chaos incarnate, destruction given form. Where Venom still carried a fragment of Eddie Brock's humanity, Carnage had none. His only code was blood. His only law was death. New York City became his playground, and every alley, every street corner, every dark shadow trembled with the possibility of slaughter. Cletus Kasady, empowered by the symbiote, was no longer a frail man with a murderous streak. He was a god of carnage, armed with blades sprouting from his body, tendrils that could tear through steel, and a mind untethered from reason. His laughter echoed across his massacres, chilling even the most hardened hearts. The birth of Carnage was not just another criminal to be dealt with, it was a plague. And soon, the heroes of the Marvel Universe realized this was not a battle one man could win. Even Spider-Man, the eternal protector of New York, struggled against Carnage's wrath. Their first confrontation was a nightmare. Spider-Man, agile and skilled, was outmatched by the raw brutality and unpredictability of Kasady's new form. Every strike of Carnage carried not just power but malice and intent to savor the suffering of his victims. Venom, too, could not ignore the terror his offspring had unleashed. Reluctantly, Eddie Brock found himself allied with his greatest enemy, Spider-Man, because Carnage was something that could not be faced alone. Together, they pursued the Red Monster through the streets, their unlikely bond forged in desperation. This unholy trinity hero, anti-hero, and monster defined some of the bloodiest battles New York had ever seen. But Carnage thrived on opposition. Where others grew weary in battle, Kasady grew stronger, more exhilarated, more alive. He taunted Spider-Man's morality, mocking his weakness for compassion. He sneered at Venom's hypocrisy, calling him soft, a failed predator. Carnage had no rules, no restraint, and that made him infinitely more dangerous. Soon, his carnage spread beyond street-level chaos. Entire groups of heroes had to rise against him. Cloak and Dagger, Captain America, Black Cat, Iron Fist, and others banded together during the infamous event known as Maximum Carnage. The city became a war zone, a battlefield of ideology and survival. On one side, Carnage and his deadly ally, Demogoblin, Doppelganger, leashed terror on the innocent. On the other, Spider-Man and his allies fought to hold back the tide of blood. Kasady relished every second. To him, this was art. Every scream, every broken body was part of his grand performance. He wasn't just killing, he was making a statement that the world itself was meaningless, that rules, order, and justice were nothing but illusions. Carnage thrived on proving that beneath every mask, every shield, every cape, lay the same fragile humanity he so loved to rip apart. And yet, in those moments of chaos, something greater emerged. The Marvel heroes fought not just against a villain, but against the very concept of unrestrained evil. Spider-Man, despite his doubts, became the heart of resistance, holding the line against despair. Venom, driven by a warped sense of responsibility, fought with a ferocity that even surprised himself. Together, they managed the impossible to push back Carnage, to cage him, to prove that even in the face of madness, unity could stand. But as history would show, Carnage could never truly be stopped. Imprisoned, weakened, even torn from his symbiote Cletus, Kasady always found his way back to the Red Hunger. Because Carnage was not just a villain, he was inevitability. As long as there was chaos, as long as there was hatred, Carnage would rise again, stronger, bloodier, more relentless. The nightmare was far from over. The reign of Carnage had only just begun. There are villains who fight for power, others who fight for revenge, and then there is Carnage. He fights for nothing but the thrill of destruction. No kingdom to rule, no fortune to gain, only chaos, only pain, only death. And it is this purity of purpose that makes him one of the deadliest beings in existence. After Cletus Kasady bonded permanently with the symbiote, New York became his playground of slaughter. Entire police units vanished in a crimson haze. Gangs that had once terrorized the city found themselves shredded in alleys, their blood painting the walls with Carnage's grotesque signature. Unlike Venom, who could occasionally be reasoned with, Carnage had no code, no boundary, no hesitation. Spider-Man, who had faced countless foes across his life, knew instantly that Carnage was unlike anything else. Venom had been a monster, but at his core, Eddie Brock still had humanity. Carnage, however, was something different, a union so perfect between human and symbiote that one could no longer distinguish where Kasady ended and the alien began. It was not a partnership, it was one entity, one mind, one singular purpose. Carnage. The city soon realized they were facing something far beyond the usual rogues gallery. The police were powerless, their bullets nothing but toys to him. Even Spider-Man's agility, webs, and intellect faltered against Carnage's unrelenting savagery. Where Spidey fought with restraint, Carnage reveled in brutality. Every confrontation ended with Spider-Man barely escaping, battered and broken, while Carnage laughed with unholy joy. But even chaos attracts enemies. Venom, who had once been Spider-Man's greatest nightmare, found himself forced into an uneasy alliance with the warp crawler for Eddie Brock. Carnage was an abomination, a twisted reflection of what he could have become. To see the symbiote spawn taken to such extremes filled him with disgust, even fear. And so, enemies became allies, united against a monster born of their own mistakes. The battles that followed became legendary. Spider-Man and Venom versus Carnage 2, forces clashing against a storm of blood. Carnage's blades of living symbiote cut through concrete as though it were paper. His laughter echoed through the streets as though he were invincible. For every plan Spider-Man devised, Carnage had an answer. For every blow Venom landed, Carnage retaliated with greater fury. And yet, behind that monstrous laughter, there was something even darker: satisfaction. Kasady was not simply killing, he was proving a point. To him, life was meaningless, morality was a lie, and order was a fragile illusion waiting to collapse. Carnage wanted the world to see what he already believed, that chaos was the only truth. Every scream, every drop of blood, every terrified face confirmed his philosophy. But Carnage's story was not limited to the streets of New York. His reign of terror spread, and with it, the symbiote's hunger grew. He left behind not only corpses, but also entire communities haunted by nightmares of the Red Demon, who could appear anywhere, at any time. Unlike other villains who could be locked away, Carnage always escaped, always returned, always found a way to spread his darkness. In one of his most infamous acts, Carnage assembled a twisted family of killers, creating a cult of chaos. Shriek, Doppelganger, Demogoblin, they joined his crusade of destruction, turning New York into a battlefield. For Spider-Man, it was no longer about saving lives one at a time, it was about stopping a wave of destruction that threatened to engulf the city entirely. The event became known as Maximum Carnage, one of the darkest chapters in the Marvel Universe, and through it all, Carnage thrived. The more chaos he unleashed, the stronger he felt. Unlike Venom, he had no weakness of morality, no lingering sense of humanity. He was free completely, utterly free. And in his freedom, he revealed a truth that horrified even the bravest heroes. Carnage could not be reasoned with. He could not be reformed. He could not be stopped. For Carnage was not just a villain. He was not even a man anymore. He was an idea made flesh, a living nightmare, a philosophy of blood. And like all ideas, he was impossible to kill. The world would soon learn that Carnage was not just an enemy to Spider-Man. He was a threat to everyone, hero and villain alike. And as his legend grew, so too did the realization. Carnage was only getting stronger. His hunger was endless, his reach ever expanding, his chaos uncontainable. Because, for Cletus Kasady, bonded eternally with his symbiote, destruction was not the end, it was only the beginning. The symbiote had always been a reflection of its host. Where Eddie Brock's Venom was a creature of rage mixed with vengeance, Cletus Kasady's Carnage was pure nihilism given flesh. He did not want control. He did not want redemption. He wanted only chaos, a universe bathed in blood, a stage where life itself became his canvas. And as his legend grew, Carnage became something far greater than a simple villain. He became the embodiment of slaughter itself. But legends are not forged in silence, they are born in war. And Carnage's war reached its most devastating climax during the events that shook the Marvel Universe to its core. Absolute Carnage and King in Black. Kasady's symbiote was never content with mere destruction. It hungered for purpose. That purpose revealed itself when Carnage uncovered the truth of the symbiote's god, Null, the primordial darkness who had birthed them from the void before the dawn of time. Null had been imprisoned, chained in cosmic exile, but his influence whispered across the stars. Carnage, ever the zealot of death, became his prophet. With the discovery of the codices symbiote remnants left inside anyone who had ever bonded with one, Carnage saw the path to ascent. If he could collect them all, he would gather enough power to awaken Knull himself, and so began his hunt. Across New York, across the globe, Carnage spread his army. Victims of past symbiote encounters, from Eddie Brock to Spider-Man to countless others, became prey for his endless slaughter. The city drowned in red, every shadow whispering with the laughter of Kasady. Why? Heroes united. Spider-Man and Venom, long-standing enemies, were forced to stand shoulder to shoulder against Carnage's reign of terror. But even together, their strength seemed pitiful compared to the godlike madness Cletus had become. Each codex absorbed, each victim claimed, made him stronger. He was no longer just Carnage. He was a living avatar of Knull's will. The final confrontation tore through New York's skyline, a clash of gods in the flesh. Eddie Brock, wielding Venom, fought not only for survival, but for the soul of his son Dylan, whose unique connection to symbiotes made him the ultimate target. In the end, through fire, sacrifice, and unity, Carnage was defeated, but his death was not an ending. It was a signal. The drums of war had been sounded. Knull was coming. Cletus Kasady had always wanted to be more than human. Through Carnage, he had achieved it. Through Knull, he had transcended it. Even after his physical death, his essence lingered, woven into the hive of the symbiote. His voice, his madness, his laughter, all became eternal echoes within the void. When Knull descended upon Earth, bringing with him an army of symbiote dragons, and drowning the planet in living darkness, it was not simply the god of symbiote who attacked. It was every fragment of his cult, every scream Carnage had sown, every nightmare he had unleashed. Carnage was not physically present in that war, but his fingerprints were everywhere. The red tide he had unleashed in absolute carnage had been the herald, the sacrificial blood that paved the way for Knull's apocalypse. In many ways, Kasady had succeeded. He had given his chaos a purpose far larger than himself. Yet even gods and monsters cannot erase Cletus Kasady. Time and again, even when his body has been destroyed, his consciousness returns. The Carnage symbiote itself has become a weapon of evolution, resurrecting Kasady or fusing with new hosts. But the result is always the same, a blood-red avatar of chaos, a reminder that true evil cannot be destroyed. It only adapts. Carnage has worn many faces since Kasady. He has bonded with others, created cults, even fought wars across realms. But the legend of Cletus himself always returns. Because Carnage is not just a man, not just a symbiote. He is an idea, the belief that existence itself is meaningless, and that in the end, all things will drown in blood. Spider-Man has fought countless foes. Venom has wrestled with countless demons. The Avengers, the X-Men, even cosmic entities have faced enemies that threatened the universe itself. Yet none cut as deeply, none disturbed as profoundly as Carnage. Because Carnage is not a conqueror. He does not seek wealth, or empire, or recognition. His only desire is destruction, chaos, without reason. That is what makes him terrifying. That is what makes him eternal. From the prison cells of Rikers Island, to the crimson skyline of New York during absolute carnage, to the cosmic darkness of Knull's empire, Carnage's story has become inseparable from the very fabric of Marvel's universe. He is not a villain to be defeated. He is a shadow that will always return. And so, the tale of Cletus Kasady ends as it began, with blood. But though his body may fall, though his laughter may fade into silence, Carnage is never truly gone. Somewhere, in the shadows, the symbiote whispers. Somewhere, in the void, Cletus laughs. And when the world grows too quiet, when heroes grow too confident, the silence will break, and the slaughter will begin again.